industrial composting.
It's very
Got the
intimidating.
gavel in like 30 days.
Ooh, and a gavel.
Precursor, as they say.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, do you have a printed copy of the agenda by any chance?
I do.
Fantastic.
You gonna steal it from me?
Well, I can't really see very well. I can just write it down quickly if I can borrow it.
Just trying to go back to digital again.
I know. My vision is not good enough for
They said if anybody
Let's see.
gets some experience, go to the mic. Otherwise,
excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, were you here when the technician came in?
No.
He talked about that if people from
today.
the seats
Well, Joe, we're asking all the EAC members to sit up here. I think the further you are on this side, except for this chair.
Just keep me out of that one.
Better you can see the screen there. Brian, do you want to come up?
I'll go wherever you want me to
You
go.
want to come up here?
It is 5:30, so we're ready to get started.
Let's see. We need one more call for.
Okay. All right.
Which was going to be basically the first agenda item.
Oh, no.
EAC agenda, attendance requirements and quorum.
Okay. Well, it's 5:30, and I'm assuming we're live. So we don't have a quorum yet.
We can go ahead and start with introductions.
Yeah.
Hope somebody rolls in, and then
I'm gonna do my update and start.
Okay.
really rather not get started unless we don't have a quorum.
Unless we have a quorum.
I would rather not get started with any business.
Okay.
Besides introductions.
So we'll get started with introductions and hope someone comes. So I'm just going to call the meeting to order. This is the Environmental Action Committee. I'm Sarah Marsh. I represent the citizens of Ward 1 and Position 2 on the Fayetteville City Council. And since we do not have a quorum yet, we're going to kill some time by going around in the room and introducing ourselves. Peter, would you like to start?
My name is Peter Nierengarten. I am the city's Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning. I'm also the staff representative or staff liaison to the city's Environmental Action Committee.
My name is Brian Pugh. I'm the Waste Reduction Coordinator for the City of Fayetteville. I'm not on the EAC committee, but I'm here to present about update on the recycling projects that we have going on.
I'm Dana Smith. I'm a member at large of the Environmental Action Committee, and I'm also the Sustainability Coordinator for Fayetteville Public Schools.
Yeah, I'm Mike Emery. I'm another member at large, live in Ward 4, and work for the Washington County Animal Shelter.
I'm Joe Kicklack, member at large. I live in Ward 4, and I'm the Youth Rec Assistant for Parks and Rec.
Hi, I'm Richard Russell. I live in Ward 1. I'm science attaché for the group. I have a degree in geology and lived in Fayetteville since the 60s.
Great. Oh, perfect.
There we go.
Come on up.
Connie, we need you up here at the front.
Yes.
Okay, I have a student who's looking for a civics opportunity, and I thought maybe this would be okay with me.
Perfect.
We have an agenda.
Welcome.
She's from Woodland Junior High. I don't know her name.
All right.
If you would, just have a seat and introduce yourself,
I will.
Connie.
Whoa.
Do you feel powerful?
No. I'm Connie Chris. Anything else you want me to say?
That'll do.
Okay.
That'll do.
Okay.
Thank you. We now have a quorum. And for anyone who is interested in joining the Environmental Action Committee, we do have an opening. And do you know what the closure date of that is, Peter?
Sarah, I don't remember the date. I think it's sometime in June.
Yes.
And it is available on the city's,
Access Fayetteville.
I looked at that and couldn't find it.
yeah.
So,
I believe it's posted on the clerk's page of the website because the clerk manages.
Clerk's
all the-
page?
Yeah,
Okay.
city clerk.
Okay, so you can look at the city clerk's page, or you can email me directly through the city website. Okay, we're going to get started with, Peter is going to talk about attendance and quorums.
So at our last meeting, we had kind of a question about quorum, what defines a quorum, and brought that up at the next staff meeting we had with the mayor and chief of staff, and kind of got a consensus from all the staff that manages similar boards to ourselves, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Active Transportation, a bunch of similar boards to us all across the city that operate in advisory functions and advisory capacity to the city council. The direction I got back was that we have a what's called a 15-minute rule, and I am supposed to be the enforcer of that 15-minute rule, and what that means is that if we don't have a quorum within 15 minutes of the designated start time for the meeting, which is 5:30, so if we don't have a quorum by 5:45, then I'm supposed to call the meeting and say we're not able to do official business without a quorum, so the meeting is thereby canceled. The government channel is not going to record anymore, and I'm not authorized to provide staff support for the meeting anymore if after that 15 minutes is no quorum. And so what defines a quorum is 50% of our membership or your membership plus one. And so there's, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, 9 members on the Environmental Action Committee.
I'm seeing 10 on my list. I did print out a list from
Let me double check.
the clerk's website. 10 plus me. I don't know.
Do you count?
I don't know if I can.
Oh, 10 plus you, so there's actually
11.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay.
Okay.
So everyone is a voting member, including Sarah,
Mhm.
our chair. And so, yeah, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people before
For a
15
quorum.
minutes in order to have a quorum. And so then the other discussion item that we had was related to attendance and attendance requirements for cities, boards, and commissions. And the direction I got there was that there is a 70% attendance requirement for cities, boards, and commissions. And what that means is you're not going to get kicked off if you don't meet that attendance requirement, but the nominating committee, who is responsible for renominate, when you want to become renominated to the Environmental Action Committee or any other board and committee with the city, they're going to ask me, the staff representative to the Environmental Action Committee, what has attendance looked like for previous members when they're wanting to be renominated. And I'm going to provide this, I'm going to be keeping track of attendance on this spreadsheet I've got right here, and that way I'll be able to tell them what attendance has looked like over the past year, 2 years, 3 years, when it comes time to be renominated.
When are you going to start doing this?
As of January, I went back through my notes and was able to come up with attendance for all the meetings thus far this year. And so an X by your name means that you're here. So we can just go through it right now. We got Richard here. We've got Mike here. And we've got Lori just came in. And we got Joe. A no means that they said they weren't, told me beforehand they weren't going to be able to be here. Connie's here. And Sarah.
Yeah.
All right?
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? So, that's the scoop. Questions?
No. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question. So what about, like, last week, we had quorum when we started, but then we didn't by the time it was over. Did you guys talk about that?
We did, and I asked that specific question, and I was advised that if a member has to leave and that then breaks the quorum, then that essentially ends official business. Yeah, so Mike has to leave. When do you have to leave, Mike?
By about 6:20 at the latest.
Okay, so when Mike has to leave, nobody else
Yeah.
comes in, that means we're done.
No, because Lori came in, right? So now we
One.
would have.
No, I leave.
Three,
We would
four,
still.
five,
Yeah,
six.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Still have.
Good. Lori saved us. All right. So we can't keep
Lori
going.
saved the day.
But if anybody else needs to leave early, then it's over.
All right, well then let's get rolling on
Sounds good.
business. Okay, the next order of business we have is plastic bags. I had a citizen, Quinn, Montana, deliver to me a petition with over 750 signatures of Fayetteville residents requesting a ban on single-use plastic shopping bags. And so I have asked Peter to look into the different types of bans and plastic management strategies that we might employ and give us a report on that. But I think anyone who has seen our streams or roadsides lately, it's really apparent that we do need to do something to address these environmental nuisances.
Yeah, I don't know if Quinn here.
No, she was on her way back from a Slow Foods conference in New Orleans, and I suspect the weather is delaying her return.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at the draft analysis that we put together after Sarah forwarded us the petition request that Quinn sent to her. Because before I talk about that, I just want to, I guess, preface the conversation with what I've heard and discussions I've had with other sustainability directors at other cities across the country. Some of the cities, large and small, that have already adopted plastic bag bans. And the feedback I've got from them is that, personally, they loathe plastic bags, and I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I can't stand riding down our trails and seeing them tangled up in our trees or, blowing across our streets. I think there are definitely a trash nuisance and an issue for Fayetteville, but from a political and policy perspective, the feedback I've received from other sustainability directors is that the bans have been contentious and they've expended quite a bit of political capital, and in the grand scheme of things, that political capital expenditure that was required to get that ban passed may not have garnered the benefit in terms of, in the greater picture of environmental issues, is that the best bang for the buck, if you will, in terms of what it took to get those bans passed. So I would say, as we begin to look at this issue from a City of Fayetteville policy perspective, we need to be cautious and we need to think long and hard about the ramifications, whether they're political, whether they're economic, in terms of how does a ban potentially impact low-income citizens at a greater effect than it may, the average citizen. What does it do in terms of jobs, whether they're jobs in the plastic bag manufacturing industry or jobs in the plastic bag recycling industry that we may have locally. There's a lot of, this thing has lots of tentacles to it. So I want us to be cautious and definitely do our homework before making a recommendation to City Council. And we're not asking right now for you guys to make a recommendation. I think what we're looking at is for your thoughts on what we've done in terms of analysis thus far. We've got a little bit more to add to the 5 options that I put in here, and then other avenues that you think might be worth pursuing at this point. So essentially, in the analysis, we went through and we identified sort of least to greatest interventions or policy approaches, I guess, if you will, related to plastic bags and regulations regarding their use. And I think with all of these, the end goal is that we want to reduce any kind of single-use bag usage within the City of Fayetteville and promote in its place, the reusable bags as much as possible. I think that's the ultimate goal. So the first one we address is just a voluntary educational approach. You know, it's basically pro cloth bag as a policy approach and advocacy and a campaign for cloth bags. It's not that unlike the campaign I was involved with when I worked for the Portland Water Bureau, where we weren't anti-bottled water, but we were pro-tap water. And so what we did is we went out, we had stickers, and you know we pushed the value and the you know environmental benefits and the great pride we had in our tap water. And we didn't really say anything bad about bottled water, but we just pushed you know what we wanted people to do, not what we didn't want people to do. So that's the first potential policy approach. The second one is recycling, and a potential requirement of what would probably end up, the way it would probably end up is that we would require our larger retailers in town, maybe retailers over 10,000 square feet, that if they're going to provide single-use plastic bags to customers, that they would then also be required to provide recycling to those customers at that facility, not unlike what Harps and Walmart have in a lot of their stores already. Question?
Just a quick question. Do we assume these are type 2? Is that correct?
Pardon me?
Type
The
2?
plastic bags themselves,
Yeah.
typically they're number 2 HDPE and number 4 LDPE,
Twos and
high
fours.
density and low density polyethylene.
So the next approach is the plastic bag ban and some form of a restriction on plastic bags that basically phases out, you know, maybe starting with your larger retailers, moving down to your smaller retailers, is the way a lot of cities have approached it. The use of plastic bags in your city. The interesting thing about a ban on plastic bags is that what it naturally does is it pushes customers to those that don't bring reusable bags, pushes them right to paper. Okay, paper is compostable or recyclable, but it has anywhere from 2 to 4 times as large of a life cycle cost in terms of the manufacturing associated with those paper bags, and they're more expensive and that makes them more expensive to manufacture, and that's why the grocers have moved to the plastic, is because they're cheaper, and it's because they have a lower life cycle cost. So yeah, the paper biodegrades, but it is more resource intensive to manufacture. So it's a definite thing we have to keep in mind with potential push towards paper. Another option could be a surcharge or a fee associated with plastic bags. You know, right now, Ozark Natural Foods offers a 5-cent refund to you if you bring a reusable bag.
Target does too.
Target does too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some grocers, including IKEA, which I guess they're not a grocer, but they actually charge 5 cents for all the plastic bags their customers ask for. From our research, grocers tend to be more receptive to to a requirement that they collect a fee for a bag than a requirement that they issue a credit for not taking a bag. So they're very similar, but some interesting nuances there. The fifth option that we identified in the study is a plastic bag ban that could be combined with a charge for paper bags. So Seattle right now has a plastic bag ban, and so if you go into a store and you forget your reusable bag and you have to take a paper bag, well then they're going to charge you 5 cents for that paper bag. Aspen, Colorado has something similar, but they charge you 20 cents for that paper bag. And then a sixth option that's not in here that I just had a meeting this afternoon with
Cyclewood.
Cyclewood, yes, thank you very much, which is a local startup firm out at the I want to call it the Engineering Research Park.
The Arkansas Research and
Arkansas
Technology
Research and
Park.
Technology Park. So they're a startup firm down there, a couple entrepreneurs that are working on a compostable bag option, and Sarah is holding a example of what that bag could look like and feel like. Obviously, it would be bigger if it was to replace a single-use plastic bag. But we could also add as a sixth recommendation a requirement that a single reuse bag must be compostable. And that bag right there is made out of waste material from the paper manufacturing industry. And as I understand from talking to them, the source of the material they're using right now is from a paper mill in North Carolina, but that same firm has a mill in Ashdown, Arkansas, and could potentially be tapped as a source for that same material. So that bag right there is compostable and must compost in 180 days. So even if it did, get out in Skull Creek and get hung in a tree, whatever, it would at least, biodegrade and eventually break down and disappear and enter the.
How's eventually? How far is eventually?
180 days.
Oh, 180 days, okay.
Does it require any
Maximum.
kind of special composting equipment to make it break down? I know a lot of the corn plastics don't biodegrade well.
Yeah, I asked them about that specifically. Would it, if it was hung in a tree on the side of Skull Creek, and they said that it would essentially break down. Sun, water would break it down just like it would if it was blown on the side of the road or thrown in the ditch or in the trash or in a compost pile. So they're not the only option, but they are an option. I mean, I think a regular paper bag would also meet a compostable, likely meet a compostable requirement. So a sixth option to include in here could be, I guess it would, I haven't completely flushed it out of my mind yet, but it could be a plastic replacement with something that must be compostable, I guess. The beauty of this bag versus corn-based compostable bag is that they're predicting that it'll cost about 3 cents to manufacture. A plastic bag costs about 1.3 cents, and a corn-based compostable bag costs like 13 to 15 cents. So it's significantly cheaper because it's a waste product from the paper manufacturing industry. So a paper bag costs about 5 cents, just to give you kind of the scale of economics there.
Did they call that a compostable or biodegradable? Because I've always understood that there's difference between the two.
Yeah, they, they advised me to check out ASTM D6400, which is the certification they were shooting for, and that has all the specs on, when, where, how. They said 60 to 80% composted in 180 days.
60 to 80% compost in 180 days. 3 cents a bag.
It's probably manufacturer will probably start at around 5 cents a bag, and then they're hoping it'll get down to 3 to 3.5 cents a bag.
And you said a paper bag is 5 cents?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of this other
It's cycle wood.
cycle wood?
And so in their plans, do they plan to manufacture these locally at our research and technology park?
No, we got into a whole discussion about how plastic bags are actually manufactured, and their niche is that they want to be able to supply the pellets that essentially any plastic bag manufacturer could then, that's already making plastic bags, could then take those pellets in place of plastic pellets and basically make one of these bags at a small Walmart size bag scale or big, like yard debris waste scale, or anything kind of in between, just in terms of whatever the market demanded. So it could be manufactured really anywhere.
But no plans to specifically manufacture here.
Their plans are to stay out of the manufacturing business and stay in the pellet
Okay.
The material supplier.
business. Yeah, this small niche. It's like one piece of the chain. Right.
So that's where the plastic bags come from, pellets?
Yeah.
As I understand it, yeah.
I did not know that.
Do we find out how much they can carry? Like, what's the weight capacity in one of those
I
bags?
don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure.
Were they do they seem optimistic about it just being like an easy replacement?
I think that's the goal, is they've been basically working with Walmart
Oh, really?
and trying to pilot it in some California stores.
So Walmart has agreed to use these? Those
I don't know that
for,
they've agreed yet,
Okay.
but they're having those conversations with Walmart.
Do you think Walmart would charge, has that ever come up, would charge for plastic bags?
Is there in other communities that have?
They probably are required to in some communities where bans are
Oh,
in
okay,
place
so
or
they
some.
could be required, so
some
that could be the
plastic bag.
community that would require the stores to, okay.
I think what what they would like to do is find, some store in likely California that has one of these ordinances that a plastic bag like this would meet the requirements of that ordinance, and they could just slide this in place of their plastic bags that they're using there or are now not able to use or supply there.
It's part of our mission to excuse me, address the bags that we see, because it seems to me like that if the large percentage of bags go into the landfill, then we'd be real smart to think about volumetrics, because volumetrics and weight are what drive landfill use, right, Brian?
So that's how they make their payback, is by
Yeah. So
economics of
I
that.
think it would be very interesting to see what percentage we think of bags are bothering us. Like, how much of them do we see? If that's our criterion, are we worried about the ones we see that are strewn everywhere, or exactly what are we up to here?
It's interesting that you say that, because we just recently became an affiliate to Keep Arkansas Beautiful and Keep America Beautiful, and we have an affiliate, Keep Fayetteville Beautiful. And last year, as part of our certification process, we had to do a litter index study in Fayetteville, where Connie went around with us on this last year.
It's very
And it was
interesting.
an all-day ordeal driving the streets of Fayetteville. And we came up with, their criteria, there's a scoring criteria, 1 through 4. 4 being just this awful mess that you see on the side of the road, 1 being you don't notice anything. We, after all day and doing this criteria with the scorers, they weren't allowed to talk to each other during the scoring, so they couldn't compare. They were just supposed to look out the window, see what they saw, and write it down. But they're looking for everything: plastic bags, cans, bottles, cigarettes, butts, all that kind of stuff. And the score came back at 1.74, which was really pretty good for a citywide litter index. And part of the requirement for being an affiliate is to do this annually. And we have it scheduled to do again on June 12th. And so if there's anybody in this committee that would like to help out with doing the litter index, we have some spots that we can put you in the van and do that. Or if there's anybody in the public that would like to do that as well. But that might answer some of your concerns. They're not particularly writing down how many plastic bags they saw, but they can make notes of what they saw. And if we ask them to make notes of what they saw, we can compare those notes and see how much were, plastic bags compared to other items that they noticed.
So Brian, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, was it you or was it Ben that had done some research on
Ben.
what percent of the waste stream in terms of mass or volume plastic bags take up in our landfills? Did you have that number, Ben?
In terms of volume,
Say, if you could come up to the microphone, please, so they can show you.
in terms of volume, plastic film waste is probably less than 1% from what I found. But it makes up a sizable portion of what you see as litter. So I think that's the breaking point for a lot of people. It's a low portion of our waste in terms of volume, but in terms of what we see on the street, we talked about earlier, it makes up a high portion. So.
Thank you. So I think in terms of why, politically selling a ban in Fayetteville, why it's important to do this in Fayetteville, we're not doing it, we can't really hang our hats on the fact that we're saving landfill space by getting plastic bags out of the waste stream. What we're really doing is we're trying to eliminate a litter problem, because
Unless you're substituting paper, that dynamic is not really understood. Are we substituting or eliminating any bag use? That's kind of a pivotal question, because if people just go ahead and start using paper, I believe you've got some pretty good sized volume differences there, don't you?
I agree, it
If
definitely
for
plays
every bag
into
in
the,
use stopped being the typical plastic and became paper or some other choice, are we looking at where we go with volume? And also, breakdown. Brian, our landfills, aren't they supposed to be pretty inert and dry? They're not actively composting or
Well,
whatever.
the funny thing about the landfills is the way that the regulations are set up. Each day they have to cover their waste, and it's called a dry tomb. Basically, they're trying to drain that liquid out of the landfills and capture that waste so it doesn't creep into the groundwater and such. When they do that, they basically cut off the oxygen supply to the waste. And when you have organic matter breaking down in the absence of oxygen, you produce a lot of gas, methane gas, and a bunch of other gases that landfills produce. So now the landfills have, typically they can either flare the gas off or they can try to collect it. And some like the fact that they produce gas so they can gather it and make electricity back out of it, which is similar to what the Tawnytown landfill here does. So that's pretty interesting dynamics of what they have in landfill. They have different types of landfills. They actually want to recirculate the liquids back into it. They call them bioreacting landfills. And there's not one in this area like that. But
Well, as far as just one more quick question, percentage of paper in your waste stream that goes to the landfill? All kinds of paper, not just paper bags? What would that be?
I believe it's as high as about 40%.
Goes into the landfills, paper.
Well, what makes up the waste stream, I think 40% of that is paper items. So. And that's pretty, when we look at the volumes that we recycle in our program, over 70% of what we, or by weight of what we sell through commodities is some type of fiber, whether it's cardboard, newspaper, mixed paper, paperboard or chipboard. That it just makes, there's a lot of it out there in the waste stream, so it's easy to recover for our residential programs.
So then if there was an upsurge in paper bag usage, those could be recycled and we could sell those as commodities?
Yes, yeah, we take the paper bags in our program currently. We do not take plastic bags in our program. We encourage them, the residents, to take them back to the stores in which they got them from. Well, not every store recycles those. So Walmart and some of these others typically get the majority of the bags if people are interested in recycling those.
Okay, and then one other question on the litter index study. You said driving around in a van. Is this all happening from a van? So you're seeing this from a roadway as opposed to like from our trail system? Because I worry that our streams are not very visible from the roadway, and you get a different perspective when you're on your bike or walking.
Right, and that's a very good point. Last year when we set this up, that question came about, but we didn't have the means to get people out of the van and get them on four-wheelers or anything like that to get them down onto the trail, so we chose not to do that. What we did choose to do, however, was to go through areas by parks. There's several parks that we drove by, and we drive really slow. We put the flashers on, we go really slow so people can get a good look. And then we also go behind retail establishments in the loading dock areas of a lot of the areas in Fayetteville. So especially on College and some of these busier business districts, in which we can see how litter is affecting the environment what's blown off of these docks. So we try to not just drive the city streets and some of the state highways through town. We did try to get a few of the other areas.
Thank you.
And I think, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I didn't go on the litter survey, but was part of the conversations last year with Keep Fayetteville Beautiful. And the intent of that survey is, a lot of it is the aesthetics of seeing litter, and it sounds like our conversation is that also coupled with the negative environmental effects of litter. I'd be interested whether there be more research or we ask someone to come talk to us specifically to talk about the impact of plastic bags on our waterways. How is that affecting our fish and our wildlife? Because I think that would be an important piece to whether that lead to policy or just with more public education, but, you know, a lot of people I think don't understand, why does it matter if there is a plastic bag in a tree or in the stream? It doesn't look good, but what is it actually doing that is bad?
And I would also like to know if what the costs are to our water and sewer division if we're getting clogged storm drains, if we're having to pull these out of our wastewater treatment plants. Is there a cost to this municipality in that capacity?
We can definitely research those items and try and incorporate them into this white paper, beef it up a little bit. What other thoughts do you guys have?
Could we research the potential of having a City of Fayetteville sponsored reusable bag? Maybe like the way I envision it, I don't know if this is practical at all, but the same way that you check to donate $3 to the National Political Fund, you could pay up front for a City of Fayetteville reusable bag and get it the same way you get your 6 trash stickers at the beginning of the year. In that way, residents pay and can get the bag from here or from somewhere else in the city. And then it's a go get 'em initiative that we all do together instead of, like you said, going against plastic bags, but going for a citywide reusable plastic bag, or reusable bag, not plastic bag, but reusable bag.
Another way that we could expand on that is maybe we could have a Find It in Fayetteville campaign where if you have your Fayetteville bag and you go and use it at a Fayetteville business, you get a discount. I don't know how many businesses we could get to participate in that, but that might
That's a good
be
idea.
at least a good transitional step before we do something more drastic to get people in the habit.
We could even think about doing that with Keep Fayetteville Beautiful if we wanted to.
I think that
I
would
think
be
that
very
would-
beneficial.
Really work well, and then have this committee be part
You know
of
who
it.
owns that Find It in Fayetteville campaign? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know
Is
if
that
that's
chamber?
part of our A&P commission maybe, or the chamber.
Okay.
I really like the idea of incentivizing, which goes a step beyond just education, but with whether it be businesses getting the 5 cent or something that we just talked about. I would initially much more lean towards that than a ban. But I think it would take more than just education, because I feel like the community has done quite a bit of we could definitely do more with education, but that coupled with some kind of incentive for people to use them.
I think when we talk about education, I don't know how many people here have actually visited the new harps in West Fork, but I was very pleased with what I saw when I was leaving the store. Actually, I think the bag for the bin for the bag should be on the entry, not the exit. But when you going past that, it was a very detailed explanation about what type of bags they took and what types of bags they did not take. And they even had little pictures to go along with it. I thought it was very well done, and if you sat there and read it for just 1 minute, you became educated as a consumer of what you could recycle. And nothing against Walmart, they do, I think, a great job trying to recover those bags. But when you walk through that front entryway, and you don't really notice half the time what that container is there for. So having education on the bins that collect those bags would be very, very useful.
Could I ask
Well,
a,
and
oh,
I
go ahead.
think that single use, it kind of conjures up the idea of, well, it's a single use, I could take my bag on my arm. But it also seems to me that there are plenty of people who go and get 20 bags. They're buying all their groceries. So the bag over the arm, the recyclable, the non-expendable bag, that's really not practical. And so got to kind of expand our thinking into, well, like a situation, well, places like Aldi's. You go in there, you can buy a bag from them, you can buy a reusable bag, or you can scrounge up a box. And a lot of people do that. And that's a second use for that cardboard, and I see lots of pluses in their approach. You know, they've got a little bit of everything going on there. And people buy carloads of food there too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Sam's has the same type of thing.
yeah, Sam's doesn't have anything for you except boxes.
And they're all recycled and have been used before.
So the consumer develops strategies for that. You know, you just go ahead and figure out what you're gonna do, you know. Take the cart out to the car, and there's no container in lots of cases.
Connie, you have comments?
A couple of them. One, what you're saying, Richard, I mean, for the large, I think with Sam's and all these people just know that's what they're going to have to do. And I think that in evolving this idea, you could do that with the other grocery stores too. I don't think you can just hit them with it immediately, but possibly through some education and reusable bags and things like that, we could ease into what Sam's and what Aldi's already does. So people are kind of used to that anyway, that idea. And then, but my other question was, I want to go back to paper bags for a minute. And Peter, I need to understand this better. Okay, so paper bags are they're biodegradable, okay? Or recyclable or whatever.
They're both.
As opposed to plastic bags, which are not. So.
Plastic bags are just recyclable.
Well, you can recycle them,
But only
yeah.
if you take them back to the store.
Right, and then they turn them back into pellets and turn them back into bags, or how the heck does
I'm not
that
sure
work?
if there's a process for turning them back into new bags, but I know there's a local firm that has offices in Springdale and Northeast Oklahoma that makes the composite wood decking, kinda like
Okay, so
Trex,
that they use those, okay, great.
out of those bags.
See, I think that would be nice for people to know that too. I think
Yeah.
the more people that were going, because I probably should know that, and Brian's probably told me that, but I missed
Well,
it somewhere.
the company in Springdale is called AERT,
Mhm.
Advanced Environmental Recycling Technologies,
Yeah.
and they actually make Choice Deck. So their competitor is Trex. So I didn't want to get people confused with that because that is their competitor, but that is a local community, local business that has an impact on our community through jobs, and it's something that it's very beneficial as opposed to throwing those bags in the waste.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they can take those, mix that with sawdust from sawmills and make
And make-
a composite board for decking and other building related materials.
Okay, that's good to know. Then the other question is on paper bags. So in the front part of making a paper bag, that's where you get into the use of energy and other
And more raw materials.
raw materials. And so is that a wash with a plastic bag? I mean, is that kind of what that means?
Well, there's lots of life cycle analyses, I guess is the title of that, out there that you can look at. But and depending on who did the analysis, determines what the answer is that you get. But the trend seems to be that the total life cycle, so taking into account the manufacturing and the disposal costs, if you will, and by costs I mean environmental, and social costs of all of that.
Right.
The plastic bag seems to have a lower cost than the paper bag, and the majority of that comes from the fact that the paper bag is so much more resource intensive to produce on the
Gotcha.
front end.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And also it occupies more space and it weighs more per unit. And
So yeah, the shipping costs associated with it,
I
add to
try
that as
to
well.
keep in mind that, yeah, we are offended by what we see strewn around the surface, but underneath the surface in Brian's world, everything we throw away, if it doesn't get recycled, it goes into the landfill. And the plastic bags go there, the paper bags go there, the plastic bags go there inside another plastic bag, inside another plastic bag with the broken glass and the dog poop, all of it goes in the landfill. Most of it goes there, whatever bag you're talking about.
So basically what I think the consensus is, and I think what I would hope that this committee doesn't want to inadvertently do is just push consumers from plastic to paper
Exactly.
because of the
Right.
higher
Right.
life cycle costs
Right.
associated with the paper.
So the idea is to reuse, although I do reuse
Yeah,
paper bags, I mean, I
Sure.
personally do,
yeah,
but,
and,
Aubrey, did you?
Well,
comment?
Madam Chairman, if I may, the difference also, do you want to encourage the use of petroleum product with plastic, or do you want to encourage the use of tree? So what's the trade-off? We don't want more drilling. We don't want our trees cut. You know, every stick on earth, whether it's a blade of grass or a native or non-native plant, is helping to cleanse the air. And if it's protecting the soil from eroding, it's helping to keep the water clean. So, and if you drill or frack or whatever for petroleum products, then you're wiping out the surface trees, you're polluting the water. We're in a terrible situation that the reusable bag is the key to reduce some of that. It's not, if everybody did it, it would make a big impact. But I was gonna also mention the, back on something there, a step back with where this stuff goes. And the flood of the 9th, we may have a flood tonight. I may be getting some more pictures of flooding in the next 3 days. But the flood of the 9th, I followed several sites in town late in the evening, and where the runoff was coming off of infill lots that have had all their topsoil removed, all their, some cases it's really deep black topsoil in South Fayetteville, and all the yellow water is running down into the street, going to the storm drains, and of course everything on this side of town in the White River watersheds collecting into the main town branch, and it's carried down. And that particular night, I got there for something I'd never seen before. The town branch had a bigger flow, stronger and faster and deeper flow than the West Fork. There hadn't been as much rain out to the south, and the West Fork was still clear, running clear out of the forested areas on the branches, other branches of the West Fork. And the town branch was big and yellow, and it had these masses of paper and styrofoam cups, containers, anything that would float was coming downstream, and it was boiling around like this. The two come together where there's a baseball field in southeast Fayetteville. And the town branch was coming this way and entering the bigger stream, historically, normally, and swirling upstream. It had stopped the flow of the West Fork from above. It was like a lake there upstream with this whirlpool. And the debris was circling out there in the stream. I do have some photos that show that in a set called on Flickr, called Urban Infill Threatens Watershed. But anyhow, there's where it goes, and it happens at the stream nearest my house, the historic channel of the town branch. It was so named because it was outside the city. The university was at the periphery of the city. And so that stream runs primarily off that campus. But it immediately collects water just downstream from 15th Street, from all the way out at the Walmart, all the way up on the interstate, coming from Weddington Drive at the top of that ridge up there is where the Illinois River watershed starts, and the Illinois River watershed also starts at the end of the Walmart property on Highway 62, and the water in front of Home Depot is going to the Illinois River watershed, similar ditches. But anyhow, also Cato Springs branch out to the southeast puts water into that same flow area, and that's behind your house, isn't it, Sarah?
Yes, and I pulled a lot of plastic out of that street.
I didn't get to see it during that flood, but it was high in your backyard.
Yes.
And so when you see that much that's actually getting to the river down there, and it's going to Beaver Lake. And every time that occurs, my house is just downstream from MLK, where there's a little shopping center just south of the high school and the university. And you see all that washed down, and it collects on the banks right below the bridge in front of my house. And then the next flood takes it all away, but by the next morning, there's more collected. So this is a critical problem, and it could be solved by making every store, if we could make them, stop doing that. Say, bring a bag, bring a plastic container, and we'll give you 10 cents, or it might take $1 off to get people to do that. It might take $10 for some people. They're just not going to do it. They want you to, the store to supply these styrofoam to drink out of, these styrofoam to take your leftovers, or you take out order. And it's just, it's unfortunate, frustrating, but you really have to see it. If you walk these creeks, you'll see what's in them. And sometimes it's amazing. There aren't many snakes. There are a lot more paper cups and other forms of debris. Thank you.
Did anyone read the article on plastic bags in the New York Times this Sunday? It was a really interesting article about is it time to bag the plastic bags? And I will make a point to circulate it to the group. But they were talking about the different strategies that have been taken around the country, and they were saying that incentives weren't really working, recycling wasn't really enforced, and that it was really just time to ban plastic. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at that article, because we're talking, I think the number one thing we need to determine is what is our goal. Is it cleaning up our watershed? Is it reducing waste? Is it looking at the life cycle costs? So I'd like us to put some thought into that. And also, Peter had listed option number 2, which is requiring them to recycle. But I would just say that, it's not the bags that people are throwing away or recycling that are causing these problems. It's the ones that are not making it into the trash can, much less back to the retailer for recycling. So I don't really know. I mean, that's great that option exists, and I hope that people who use plastic bags do that. But I mean, it's clear that people in our community are not. And then the other option I would like us to consider is, in addition to participating in the litter index study, is maybe we have just a community cleanup day, and let's pull this stuff out of our streams, and let's get it all together, and let's take a good look at it and see what's in there. Because I go out every week and clean the Cato Springs branch, which runs behind my house, and every week I pull out a significant amount of plastics. And actually the percentage of single-use bags, like grocery bags and stuff, is actually not that high. It's actually a lot of other things. It'll be, a bag for tater tots or yard mulch. It's interesting seeing what's in there. So, as we're looking at plastic bags, maybe the reuse or the single-use bags are low-hanging fruit, and so that's what we deal with. But ultimately, we might need to look beyond that. I know many municipalities have bans on non-recyclable or biodegradable takeout containers, so that would take care of those styrofoam cups. And maybe that would be an easier thing for our community to implement.
They have bans on styrofoam?
Mm-hmm.
One more
That's
comment.
awesome.
If what Peter says is true about political capital and difficulty in enforcing bans, I'm always more interested in, actually the solid waste fascinates me because identifying value, there are plenty of people around who will do the collecting if something has value. Even no matter how small it is. I mean, you think about the lengths that people will go to get an aluminum can and take it and get credit for it. I think that there's a lot of positive energy in thinking about things in that way as well, parallel to penalizing, but incentivizing. Somebody's got time to collect that stuff up if it's worth a little bit.
Well, one other thing related to that, and Mr. Jurgens might address this. The university used to have open containers for waste material, and there would be homeless guys dragging huge garbage bags toward the recycling center because they would collect the aluminum and other things, and then they started getting these crusher things. So anything that's put in the waste bins in many areas on the campus and around the city, the businesses, you can't look in there and say, there's 500 cans, let's get them out and bag them up and take them and recycle them. And these would be homeless guys doing this back just 10 years ago. Now they're chased off if they do it. And it's the students and other people using businesses that have these things that are at fault. It's not the homeless guy's fault. He's doing a virtuous thing and making a few bucks honestly by doing it. And I've over the years occasionally said we need to require everybody to dumpster dive once a month. Seriously, because we're putting money down those things. There could be hundreds of dollars in one dumpster on the university campus in aluminum alone, and it's all going to the landfill.
I wanted to just briefly say, when we were talking about the cleanup at the streams, Keep Fayetteville Beautiful was involved in 2 cleanups earlier this year. One in February for Skull Creek and one in April for Lake Fayetteville. Skull Creek, we collected over 1 ton of...
1.5 tons.
And then Lake Fayetteville, can you remember how much was pulled out?
Like 0.8 tons.
Yeah. And Ben is actually involved with another cleanup coming up next weekend, or this weekend. Yeah, this weekend, the 25th, which will be the West Fork. They're meeting at the Riverfront Park there at West Fork. But there will be some sites here in Fayetteville in which they'll be cleaning that sections of the river as it moves through Fayetteville. So I encourage people to come out and get involved with that aspect of that cleanup, because that's a good way to get back to your community and get this trash out of our waterway in respect to the West Fork. So that's at 9 o'clock at Riverfront Park in West Fork. You can meet there on Saturday, May 25th.
Great, thank you. Are there any final comments before we move on? All right.
So I took some copious notes here on what your comments were, and we'll work to incorporate that into this this analysis and look to bring this back to the committee in a couple months, and then see where we can go with it. All right.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Brian Pugh from our Solid Waste Division, and he's going to give us a recycling update.
Right. Peter had asked me to come and talk about a couple of topics. One, wanted me to give an update on the 337 plastics and what's going on with that. Unfortunately, we still have that load waiting on our dock. We have not been able to move that load. In fact, things have gotten a little bit worse because China has enacted they call it Operation Green Fence. China just recently elected new leadership in their country. And one of the things that this new leadership is trying to do is cut down on the amount of garbage that's coming into their country. So they are actually stopping vessels at sea before they reach China and inspecting them, particularly the recycling materials. And if they find trash in these so-called recyclables, they're turning around and sending them back. So there's been a lot of plastics and paper as well pushed back onto the domestic markets because of China's reluctance to take this stuff any longer. I think they're finding ways around it because there's other countries like Vietnam and possibly others that are willing to accept it. So that problem is basically shifting to other countries that are willing to exploit their workers to dig through this material. So not too many domestic markets yet. However, there might be some glimmer of hope because there's a company called Agilix, which Waste Management is one of the major shareholders in that company. And they've been searching for a way to take mixed plastics because they get that in their MRFs all the time. This company has the technology to do the plastics to oil operation, much like what we were trying to do with that company in Pryor before they went out. So the technology is not the issue. The company in Pryor was the issue. They were not well managed, and some things happened with their shareholders, and that's why it went out. It wasn't because the technology didn't work. So this Agilix company, they have some operations, but they have licensed this technology to some companies in the southeast. And there's one in Atlanta that I've been talking with, and if we can get the freight to work out, of course they won't pay me for that material, but they might be willing to take it and include that into their plastics to oil operation. So if we can get the freight to work, we can move that material. So there might be some companies with that technology moving into the southeast region of the country within the next couple of years. So hopefully we'll have some emerging markets in which we can move that material. Any questions on the 337s?
What little reading I've done about it, it's plastics to oil is not, doesn't really discriminate that much between the kinds of plastic, right? It's sort of a distilling operation.
Right, it goes, the technology basically takes that plastic, puts it into a vat, for a better, or for a lack of a better term, and they take that from a solid to a liquid to a gas through that process, and then they can recover that material and turn it back into oil. And this particular one in Atlanta, and if anybody wants to look it up, it's Agilix.
Oh, almost spelled it right.
Agilix.
Let's
And
spell it again.
Agilix. And they have on their website, they have pictures and explanations about the process and how that works so you can see it. But the market in Atlanta was basically turning that back into a diesel fuel, is what they were going to use that for. So hopefully with this issue of not only waste plastics affecting all our environment, especially stuff that gets in the oceans and stuff that we're finding there, but also the energy dependence that we have on other countries in the form of oil, that maybe there'll be some better economics and market conditions emerge in which these operations will succeed better. And we'll have some more options locally in this region to move materials with. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but isn't our policy moving forward going to be that before the city begins collecting 3 through 7 plastics again, we're going to secure 2 viable
that's exactly correct.
markets for
That
the
way we don't
3
run
through
into the
7s?
same issue that we ran into with Pryor, get excited to use one market and then all of a sudden it disappears. But just to be clear, I was just trying to work with that company in Atlanta just to get rid of what we have currently and not to enact a new program for collection of the 3 through 7s. We will wait for several markets to emerge in which we can feel comfortable in using. Okay, so the next thing on my list that Peter wanted me to talk about was the education program and how that's been working. Ben Maddox, who's been commented a couple times in this meeting, and Nina Prater are Energy Corps members that are working for the Solid Waste Division, and they have been working on an education program. As of the end of April, through different presentations to schools, Head Start programs, giving tours, doing booths at the farmers market, going and speaking to businesses, particularly on Dixon Street with the glass program, doing door-to-door surveys in areas around Walker Park for the recycling program. They, through the end of April, had reached over 950 people through direct discussions and presentations on our recycling program. So that doesn't include what's happened in the month of May.
It's up to 1,500.
Up to the
Yeah.
mic, please.
It's closer to 1,500 now. So
Right.
We had a lot of Earth Day and end-of-year school events. So
Ben has been very, very busy in May, reaching a lot of people. Going to, in fact, you were at Owl Creek today, talking with the Gardening Club on composting. So they're getting out there. They're making presentations to groups and providing education. So that aspect of it's going pretty well. The other aspect of the marketing and our mascot, we're getting there. We have ordered the costume for the mascot. He'll be arriving in mid-June, hopefully.
Remind us what our mascot is.
Our
again?
mascot is called Rudy. I don't have a picture of Rudy. I didn't want to spoil the surprise for everybody when we unveil this. But Rudy, the recycling pig, kind of fits with Fayetteville. We could either have chosen a pig or a bulldog, and we felt the pig had a little bit better options when it related to trash. So we could kind of play off that and make some fun things come out of the mascot with a pig. And nobody has a mascot that's a pig other than the Razorbacks. I mean, so we're pretty excited about Rudy and his unveiling. My hopes are that we can unveil Rudy with the grand opening of the North Street drop-off, which is what I was going to segue into next, was an update on that. If anybody's been over to North Street between Garland and Leverett by Skull Creek Trail and noticed any dirt work going on, that is where the Marion Orton Recycling drop-off facility is going to be located. It's gone through the Planning Commission. Everything's on track with that. Depending on what happens tonight with the weather, hopefully we can keep on track and get the asphalt down either this week or next week. And we're looking at June for having a date in which that can be opened. The site will be well lit. It will have security cameras on site. It will be fenced. We will have an attendant there. Actually, we've already hired the attendant, and we have been training him on our current drop-off facility. And his days, he's going to be working are Friday through Tuesday from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We've done analysis on looking at the traffic volumes of our current site, and most of those cars come during those hours. So we're going to have him there over the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, so there won't be, he won't be there on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But we will have a person there whose main role is to help with education and educate people. We feel like if we can get out from the get-go and get people educated on how to use that site, we won't have some of the issues that we've had on 15th Street with trash, which, interestingly enough, we tried something new in the last couple of weeks, and this worked out really well. We've always had an issue with people dropping off trash at the 15th Street drop-off. And it's always been my assumption that you needed to have some containers there because people are going to have some residual materials from the recycling that they needed to get rid of. Well, that basically encouraged people to use those containers for their household trash. So we started, we put signs on them. We've moved them away from the bins, closer to the little area where our bulletin board was at. Put signs on that, and it helped a little bit, but people still would come up, they'd read the sign, and open it up, put their trash in there, and go on. So what we did is we removed the bins completely. So there are no trash cans at the 15th Street drop-off, and we have noticed that people aren't leaving trash. It was too much of a temptation when there's a container out there. But we've actually witnessed people driving up, if they're doing recycling, they do recycling, but they have this bag that they're looking for a place to put it. They look around, they can't find a bin, they put it back in their car and they drive off with it. So we still get the big items, you know, the furniture and the appliances and some of the hazardous waste and stuff like that, but the bags of trash have been lessened just by us removing the containers. So that's a lesson learned that we're going to incorporate into the North Street drop-off, and hopefully educate people from the get-go that that is just for recycling and not a drop-off for waste.
Have you noticed any, are people putting trash in the recycling containers now?
They do, and that's always occurred.
Okay.
But we haven't noticed it to the point where we noticed that that's, instead of being in the bin, that's where it's going. It's still the same level that it's always been,
Okay.
but it hasn't increased enough for us to say, well, yeah, now they're just putting it into the recycling containers. So, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about was our glass recycling program and how that's going. If anybody saw Saturday's paper, there was a really nice article in there about our glass program and how that's progressed. We started back in July of last year with 8 businesses that were working on the pilot program with us. We now have 36 businesses that are recycling glass on Dixon Street. And we have a route that we use a rear load truck, which we already had the truck, we already had the people. That truck and those people were allocated to our yard waste program. And so now on Wednesday morning, it takes us about an hour to run up to Dixon Street, hit these 36 businesses and pick up the glass and bring it back to our facility. We are getting over 2 tons of glass a week off of that program, so we're pretty excited about it. We're partnering with the Boston Mountain Solid Waste District. They're going to be using some grant money in which they can purchase some indoor containers, little 13-gallon Slim Jims that they can give to the businesses. Ben and Nina have been working with the businesses to try to get that list to going and find out how many containers we need. So now we'll be able to give them something in the bars, in the restaurants that they can put the glass in and take it out to the larger containers that we have for the city collection. So it's growing. We're pretty excited about it. This article also touched on the fact that Ripple Glass donated. Actually, it was Owen Corning that donated the fiberglass insulation to the city because of the fact that we recycled over 1,000 tons of glass with them last year. And for those who aren't familiar, Ripple Glass has a contract with Owen Corning, and Owen Corning makes fiberglass insulation. So that's just kind of a full circle approach that they do with their communities that work with them to recycle the glass. And there was over 14,000 square feet of insulation donated to Habitat for Humanity at the Restore site off of 15th Street last Friday. And that's going to go into their operations. And I believe from what Derek Hillier was saying in discussions with him, that was going to help about 6 homes to be able to insulate those homes. So it's just a wonderful program that we've been able to tap into and shows the importance of recycling glass in our community. And so with that, I'll take any other questions that people might have about recycling.
Did you also have a quick update for us on recycled art?
Oh,
And,
okay.
what's going
I'm
on
glad
there?
you pointed that out. That is something that we need to just throw out to people. Back on Earth Day, I was actually contacted by McNair School. Gosh, I can't remember. About a couple months before Earth Day, about doing some type of event, and so they ended up doing a walk-run fundraiser at Gully Park on Earth Day, and so that money that was raised through those kids, several hundred kids, they donated back to the city. And so now we have $800 that they donated back to the city. Well, what we talked about doing was a recycled art project and we want to have this by the new drop-off facility on North Street, near the Skull Creek Trail. And so our hopes are, in discussions with a lot of different groups here, we'll take some of that seed money that was given to us through those kids at McNair, and we'll add to it through our promotional funds that we've budgeted in our solid waste division. And I want to put out an RFP for artists to look at and put together some type of sculpture either made from recycled materials or have a recycled material theme or something along those lines in which we can put together a selection committee and choose from and have that as a piece of art on the trail system near our new drop-off. So that is something that we're pretty excited about. It'll be the first endeavor for us to get into doing art in Fayetteville, and we're pretty excited about it.
Nice.
So I had a question. Earlier you had mentioned that about 40% of our waste stream is paper. And the agreement with Ripple Glass, how they're turning the glass into insulation, got me thinking, is there an opportunity for us to work with one of the paper insulation companies that does the cellulose insulation to convert that paper to cellulose?
We do already. In
Okay.
fact, our newspaper that we collect goes up to Joplin to a company called Fiberlight Technologies, and that's exactly what they do with this paper. They make the cellulose insulation, and
That's the blown-in type
that's
of
the blown-in
insulation?
insulation. And they only use newspaper. They don't take the mixed paper, and they pay more for the newspaper than they do. They don't need the mixed paper, but the newspaper is more valuable, so they actually pay a premium price for it. And they're always asking us if we have a load ready, because so many communities don't do newsprint any longer. When you go to single stream recycling programs, your paper just becomes a mix altogether, and it gets marketed as a mixed paper grade. And so since they cannot use that, they are looking for communities that still do separation of their paper products from newspaper into mixed paper. And so we have a really good relationship with them. It's been a steady market for us, and every bit of newspaper that we collect in our program goes to them, and they have a high demand for it. So.
Excellent.
I just had one more paper question. Are they adverse to getting higher grades of paper in with that newsprint, like like bond paper?
I don't believe they use that. I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that they like the newspaper for the qualities that it has in it, the wood pulp and material that they have spec for their products. So I don't believe they use any type of other paper.
So should the newspaper be separated from the slick advertising?
Yes, we definitely want people to take the sleeve, which you could take to Walmart because they actually recycle those types of bags along with their other plastic bags.
No, I mean the flyers that are in there, slick
Oh,
flyers.
anything that comes in the newspaper, they will take back. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about taking out the advertisements or the slick papers or anything like that.
And magazines?
Not too many papers have the magazines in it, but their statement is whatever comes in the paper, they will take. So
But
they don't have an issue with it.
Magazines that we possess do not go with the newspaper either.
Magazines that are separate, they actually go into the mixed paper stream.
So you would rather they were bagged separately?
Yes, definitely.
bin.
Okay.
Yes. Very good point. Thank you.
And if your paper gets wet,
They don't like wet paper.
so you have
Yeah.
to dry it out before you put it in.
Yeah, they.
Or you can also put it in your home compost bin.
Yeah, I was about to say you can always lay it down
Always love
for
it.
your
Yeah.
plantings underneath your mulch and things like that as well. But yeah, they don't like the wet paper. They want it dry, and that's why it's very important in our recycling program that we give the lids for those recycling bins. And people, if they snap those lids on there, like tonight when it's raining, tomorrow's collection, their paper will be dry.
But some people, they get damaged. Wind blows from the street, they get hit or something. Does the city charge for a new lid, or you have to get a whole?
If they bring in the lid to us, then we'll replace it. Yeah, just bring us your old one that's cracked or broken, and we'll replace it.
You say to the alderman, or?
Yes, we had that discussion last week, as a matter of fact. So.
Yes.
No. Take it to the, where would you take it, people?
Oh, okay.
Public
Our
information.
office is at 1560 South Happy Hollow Road. That's the solid waste and recycling office, and we're open from Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. If you have a cracked bin or a cracked lid and you want that replaced, you can bring those in. We'll take the cracked and broken ones and replace it.
And then I also wanted to let the public know, from this last week's council meeting, we had approved funding for, we'll be giving 2 recycling bins to all new households. And if you currently just have 1 bin and you'd like a second bin, to call.
Right, and that was in relation to a piece on the agenda in which we were asking for more monies, and that's because we're doubling basically the amount of bins that we're giving out to people.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing that because we want to encourage recycling, and what we've been finding in a lot of these single stream programs that people use them more is because they have a larger capacity at their home, and these carts are larger. Well, if we can give them 2 bins, one for their paper items, one for their bottles and cans, they're likely to recycle more. Plus, the other aspect of that is it speeds up our collection process. When our recycling driver picks up a bin and there's nothing in it but bottles and cans, he can go through it real quick, set it down, and the next one has nothing but paper items in it. And if the newspaper is stacked on top or maybe separated somehow from the other papers, it's simple just to throw that into the newspaper and dump the mixed paper into where it goes. Cardboard is typically larger, so it's flattened underneath the bin. That goes where it needs to go on a truck, and it just speeds up the process of the collection. So we just feel like it was important for us to start offering 2 bins to the residents to help with our recycling program.
One comment, I thought they would also, if you call, they'll just deliver it to you, trade it out. Is that correct?
Yeah,
or not?
That could be a little bit.
It can be
I
tricky.
mean, we don't want to drive all over town to deliver one lid and stuff like that. But when we're delivering the carts, like when people come to City Hall and they have their sign up for their water service and they exchange their cart size, or if they're keeping the cart size and they don't have a bin, we'll deliver them at that point. Yes.
But if people have mobility issues,
If that,
deliver it
sure, there's
for our senior
circumstances, but
citizens.
you're right.
Is there a way, Ryan, to deliver lids or do bins with, by the collection, the guy who's coming over and collecting my recyclables at my house?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of space on that truck.
there not?
I actually had that discussion with the drivers the other day.
Mhm.
If they get to a spot, like I told them, if they get to a spot and they see this bin and they've tagged it several times because it's broken, and they put on there, please contact us, we'll get you a new bin. If they come back time after time, I told them, if you can carry one bin out there, just take
do
it
it
out there
and swap
and
it.
do it. But that's not a typical process that we do with that, just
Okay.
because those trucks are not designed to carry those containers. We have a box van in which we deliver carts and bins to the residents.
Okay, anything,
I have
oh,
a
go ahead.
question real quick. Just, first I just want to say thank you to you and your staff for working with McNair. That was an incredible project, and it's really neat for the middle schools. And was also just wondering if there was a really quick update on recycling at the apartments.
Oh, okay, sure. We still have five complexes in which we are recycling. All those complexes are over 100 units in size. We are kind of changing our system up a little bit. If you'll remember when we started this, we have these specialized containers that are source separated into 6 different commodities. And the idea was you put it at one apartment complex for one day and then let it stay there that morning all the way through that evening, pick it up the next morning, move it to the next apartment complex. We were doing that in hopes of making our containers last for more complexes and make it less expensive for us to implement recycling at the apartment complexes. What we're finding is that people are just not using them. We've not made it easy enough for them to go out. They might forget what day their recycling day is. They're not going to store that material. The dumpster's right outside their door. So what we are doing is we're also in this agenda request for tomorrow night, we're asking for more monies to which we can buy some more of the larger boxes for the apartment program. So we've been able to get some through grant monies, and we've been able to get some through our operational budgets. And then we're working with, we've got 2 of the 5 so far permanently set. So now those containers are sitting out there every day of the week. And then the next step of that is we're applying for a grant with the our ADEQ, Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, and Boston Mountain Solid Waste District, in which we can get some indoor containers for apartments. So with these 5 that we were using, be able to give those to the apartment complexes for the residents to have in their units in which they can put stuff in, because that's very similar to what we have with our recycling program residentially, is we have given them a bin for their use to put those bottles and cans and paper in, and that in hopes to encourage them to recycle in their units and then take it out to the containers that'll hopefully be there permanently. So it's evolving, and so we definitely need to start looking for more apartment complexes to sign up for the service. It's still 95 cents per unit per month for a complex to have the service, and that just covers the cost of us running trucks out there to move the roll-off containers around for picking up the recycling.
Who absorbs that cost? Is it the owner or is it just the individual?
It depends on the apartment complex, because there's 2 ways that apartment complexes are charged. If they're a individually metered account, like most of the Lindsay apartment complexes are, the units, the people who occupy those units pay the utility bill, which solid waste is on the utility bill.
Okay.
If it's a master metered account, then the property owner pays for all of the utilities, and that bill goes straight to them. So it just depends on how it's metered.
Okay, any other questions for Brian?
One thing on that, on the bins, you recycle the bins if they're damaged? You send
If they're broken, we do, yes.
Yeah, and so what do they cost?
how much they cost when you purchase them?
Yeah, for the city and the person has to
Right.
buy it.
The bins are currently they're $10.50 plus tax for one bin, one lid.
So I'm virtuous if I keep using the old one, but never put paper in the one with a bad lid.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no point in wasting it if it's still
Yeah,
whole.
if it's still good, you know, it's funny because the drivers say, yeah, we go out there and people have taken duct tape and they've wrapped
Yeah.
it around their bins to keep it going and stuff like that. They definitely get to a point where they're just very flimsy and if they're broken anyway. So, but yeah, it is the cost of the city to have those containers, but we definitely want to encourage recycling and we want to get people with the capacity at their homes in which they can take all of their materials and recycle it easily with our program. So it's important for us to be offering those containers in that respect.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Brian. I know that Connie is gonna have to leave here in a minute, and it's almost 7 o'clock, so we've been here an hour and a half. We have 2 items left on our agenda, the invasive species and the Enduring Green Network. Do we wanna tackle these tonight, or do we wanna table those to next meeting?
One comment, I just got a text that we're under a tornado warning.
Okay, we are under a tornado warning.
Actually,
It's until 7:15.
Don came down here, and that's what, he told me the western part of the county is under a tornado warning, and Fayetteville's just east of where the line is, although the cell is moving this direction, but we're not actually,
Did you get the campus one?
I just got the campus one.
oh, the campus says something there, okay, well, I have the National Weather Service here, but anyway, wherever they want to draw the line, it's close.
Okay.
So we can push both those items to,
Yeah,
the next time.
to next time, and
Next
let's,
meeting
just to
is-
repeat for everyone out there watching, that we are under a tornado watch or warning. So even if you are not in the warning area, please make an emergency preparedness plan and be prepared to act, and pay attention to the weather. You can also sign up for severe weather alerts through our city website, that's accessfayetteville.com.
The next meeting is
And our next meeting is,
it the 17th, is that right?
do you have that?
This is the third Monday?
third Monday, whatever that is
It's
in.
the 17th of June.
Is the
17th
17th of June at 5:30. And again, I would encourage anyone who's interested in serving on the Environmental Action Committee to visit the city clerk's page of our website and apply. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
I just visited it, and I don't know